All right, guys, and welcome back to the First Team Fantasy Podcast. Right now, we're going to go over the rest of our Sunday recaps, getting to you a little late, but better late than never, right?
Yeah.
So, we're going to start off with the Rams headed into Arizona and got destroyed by the Cardinals, probably partly because their offensive line got decimated, as well as they lost to Cooper Cup. But we'll talk about that right now. So, Matt Stafford had a very poor performance fantasy wise. He was 19 for 27 with 216 yards, and that's it. 6.6
Yeah.
fantasy points on the day for Stafford in a game that we were hoping he would be a decent streaming option. Unfortunately, that was not the case, obviously, with Cooper Cup going down, but honestly, he has no real time to throw the ball to. Um, I don't know. It's kind of scary looking at the Rams right now. But we'll see moving forward. Kyron Williams' day was saved by a touchdown. He did play 79% of the snaps, but was not efficient running the ball at all.
Mm-hmm.
12 carries for 25 yards and that touchdown, but he also caught four of his five targets for 27 yards, giving him 15.2 points. Not a horrible day by any means, but
Yeah.
without that touchdown, it would have been a little rough for Kyron. Could also be a little rough moving forward because this offense might be a little more one dimensional with their wide receiver one now being Demarcus Robinson, and their line, like I said, is pretty beat up. Blake Corum only played 15% of the snaps, but had eight carries for 28 yards. Ronnie Rivers also had some run in this game, but didn't actually run the ball, just caught one pass for no yards. Moving into the receiver room, Demarcus Robinson played 92% of the snaps, caught two of his four targets for 50 yards, 7 points for him. Cooper Cup, as I said, got injured in this game after only playing 52% of the snaps. Four catches on his six targets for 37 yards. A very disappointing day after the extreme performance we saw in week one.
Yeah.
They're not going to put him on IR, apparently. I mean, I guess they only have so many spaces on IR, but expect to see Cooper Cup out for an extended period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we're looking at the other options right now in this receiving room, hoping for something. Like I said, Demarcus Robinson. Tutu Atwell got 7.8 points in this one, catching three of his four targets for 48 yards. Only played 19% of the snaps, though. When he is out there, it seems Matt Stafford does like to throw him the ball, but he's not out there too often. Jordan Whittington is seeming to take over that kind of wide receiver two role, with Tyler Johnson seemingly playing out of the snap. Whittington moved up from, or let me see, I forgot how many snaps he played last week, but it was not a very substantial amount. 3% of snaps last week. He only got on the field for two offensive snaps to 50% this week.
Yeah.
So it's clear with the injuries, they're going to use him in that role. He caught both of his targets for 22 yards. Tyler Johnson played 87% of the snaps, caught two of his three targets for 20 yards, 4 points respectively, and then 4.2 for Whittington. Colby Parkinson, we were hoping could be somewhat of a decent streaming tight end option in this one. Played 81% of the snaps, but only got two targets, which he caught one of for 12 yards.
Yeah.
So that's really all for the Rams side of the ball. We were hoping for a lot better days out of them, but with the injuries, I mean, these things happen. It's a part of fantasy football. The injury bugs hit pretty hard this year, especially on this team. So we'll see what is to come of it. If you picked up pieces from this offense, it's going to be tough sledding this week against the division rival in the Niners.
Yeah. And there's we'll cover it more in the preview, but yeah, it's definitely looking tough for the Rams. On the other side of the ball, the Cardinals, the guys we wanted to pop off in this game absolutely did so. Kyler Murray had legitimately a Hall of Fame worthy game. His jersey and the game ball went
Hall
to
of Fame or
Cam.
the first half
Yeah, he
of
was
that.
just about perfect in this one. The he was 17 of 21 for 266 yards. He threw three touchdowns, no interceptions. Carried it five times for 59 yards, giving him 28.54 fantasy points. Just a monster week for Kyler Murray. And I know we've been really high on Kyler Murray through the offseason. They've went out and got him some additional weapons, and he is showing that when Kyler Murray is healthy and playing football, he plays it at a very high level. His number one weapon, Maserati Marv, had an incredible first half in this one. Caught, a 20 or something yard touchdown. They get the ball back, and he goes 60 something yards for another touchdown in the first quarter. He finishes with 4 catches, 130 yards, and the 2 touchdowns, giving him 29 fantasy points. Trey McBride caught all 6 of his targets for 67 yards, giving him 18.7. So his 2 lead pass catchers absolutely got it done. And it came to the point, Kyler only threw the ball 21 times. They stampeded through this one, so we didn't see nearly as much from Michael Wilson and Greg Dortch as I feel like we would not typically, but almost typically see in a closer game, or if the Cardinals are playing from behind. They're not going to blow out every single team like this, obviously. So Michael Wilson was only targeted twice, which he caught for 31 yards, giving him 5.1. And Greg Dortch the same, caught both of his for 11, giving him 3.1. Elijah Higgins actually got some good run in this, and he caught his lone target for an 18-yard touchdown that Kyler looked absolutely insane on. Funny enough, the 4 incompletions from Kyler all went to Marvin Harrison, and he felt pretty bad about it after the game. Something for them to laugh at for sure. James Conner obviously got heavy workload, especially due to the score and the Rams' inability to stop the run. He carried it 21 times for 122 yards and a touchdown. He caught his lone target for 2 yards, giving him 19.4. He played 62% of the snaps, and we saw a lot more Trey Benson in this game. He acted as the backup running back, carrying it 11 times for 10 yards. And he caught his lone target for 7 yards. Emery DeMercado came in and rushed the ball twice for 46 yards. Obviously, there's not too much value in holding a Cardinals backup running back unless you have James Conner. But really just, everyone we would start this week got it done. Even Matt Prater gave us 14. The defense gave us 12. It was just a monster week for the Cardinals.
I'm just not going to tell you what just happened. Yeah, so we liked what we saw out of the Cardinals, and we didn't like what we saw out of the Rams by any means. Moving on to our next game, Derek, actually, do you want to take us into that?
It's the Bengals. They lost a absolute nail biter to the Chiefs, 25-26. Joe Burrow looked a lot better in this one. He was 23 for 36, 258 yards and 2 touchdowns, did not throw an interception, carried it 6 times for 9 yards, giving him 17.2. A solid fantasy finish for Joe Burrow. And I believe the more Jamar Chase plays through the season, and if T. Higgins can come back healthy, this offense can find its rhythm. It was good to see them perform how they did and also be competitive in Kansas City after their week 1 performance against the Patriots. Zach Moss, it's tough. He's the lead back by far. He played 80% of the snaps, but he's just not efficient on the ground so far. Carried it 12 times for 34 yards, caught his lone target for 13. It gave him 5.7. Chase Brown carried it 4 times for 31 yards, giving him 3.1. Jamar Chase still has not found that full rhythm. He was actually blanketed pretty heavily in this one. He was only targeted 5 times, and he caught 4 of them for 35, giving him 7.5. Both Joe Burrow touchdowns came to Andre Osavas. Yoshivas. He caught 2 of his 4 targets for 7 yards in both the touchdowns, giving him 14.7. If you plugged him in, if you had, a Keenan Allen or someone that got ruled out close to game time and you had to pick up someone on waiver and you rolled him, it absolutely paid off for you. Jermaine Burton and Trenton Irwin are pretty irrelevant. It's clear that when T. Higgins is out, who the top two receivers are in this room. Jermaine Burton gave 5.7 and Irwin gave us 1.5. Mike Gesicki, on the other hand, played 47% of snaps, was targeted 9 times, caught 7 of them for 91 yards, giving us 16.1. The Bengals like to alternate their tight ends. It's rare to see one of their tight ends play more than 50% of snaps, but it's clear that fantasy value out of the tight ends, Mike Gesicki gets it done. Out of any of the options, he's going to be the lead guy there. But again, when T. Higgins comes back, he's obviously going to take a hit. Evan McPherson gave us 15, and the defense, despite giving up 26 points, gave us 10 fantasy points because they did wreak some havoc.
That they did, which caused another poor outing for Patrick Mahomes on the other side of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Only threw 25 passes, which we're going to see a lot less of that sort of game script from the Chiefs,
Yeah.
and we're going to talk about why in just a second. But like I said, 18 of 25 for 151 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions.
Mm-hmm.
Ran the ball 4 times for 29 yards, finishing with 14.9 fantasy points. Um, Another, like I said, rough outing for Patrick Mahomes. We would
Mm-hmm.
like to, and honestly, especially with what I'm about to talk about now, I believe we're about to see much, much better days out of Mahomes. I don't think they're going to have a choice if they want to win games and, retain a chance at three-peating.
Yeah.
So I got to pour one out for Isaiah Pacheco. Fractured fibula, right?
Yeah.
Gonna be out for 6 to 8 weeks at the very least. Saw a quote from Andy Reid saying he could return this season or next season after surgery. So if you, like me, are one of the fantasy football players with Isaiah Pacheco now on your IR, I'm right there with it. It hurts.
Yeah.
It sucked. And I mean, the usage he got in this game and his performance is exactly why I went ahead and drafted him in the second round, why I loved him as a workhorse. 19 attempts for 90 yards, caught all 5 of his targets for 21, 16.1 points without a touchdown. And then he gets hurt.
Yeah.
So it's unfortunate to see. I believe this is going to move to a running back by committee type of thing. They just signed Kareem Hunt to their practice squad and Keontae Ingram to the active roster to go along with Samaje Perine and Carson Steele, who played 22% of the snaps, saw 7 attempts for 22 yards, but lost a fumble, so
Mm-hmm.
he only scored zero point 0.4 fantasy points. Samaje Perine, on the other hand, played 14% of the snaps, did not carry the ball one time, caught his lone target for 3 yards, giving him 1.3 fantasy points.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what the Chiefs are dealing with. Not saying that's the best performance out of either one of them, but I don't think either one of them can hold a candle to what Isaiah Pacheco
For
was
sure.
able to do. So I think it's going to be a lot higher passing volume in Kansas City. You're going to see better days for the likes of Travis Kelce, which I will get to in a second. Rashi Rice, on the other hand, who started off well, played well again in this game, caught 5 of his 6 targets for 75 yards and a touchdown, 18.5 fantasy points.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Out there for 83% of the snaps. We're loving Rashi Rice. Xavier Worthy, now he didn't have the best fantasy performance, but with the recent news that Hollywood Brown will not come back this year at all, I think it's only going to get better for him, especially with the development in the backfield. I think they're going to be using him a lot more run game,
Yeah.
and they're going to be kind of running through the passing game with a lot of the screens and the short stuff, and I think he will benefit greatly from that.
Mm-hmm.
He saw an uptick in snaps this week. He played 63% last week, 68 this week, 10 more snaps from 34 to 44. Granted, the Chiefs did run 11 more plays on offense, but like I said, I think he's going to get more usage as the Chiefs' play style kind of has to morph if they want to stay competitive.
Yeah.
Justin Watson also saw 45% of the snaps, caught both of his targets for 22 yards, 4.2 fantasy points. Um, Travis Kelce was out there for 91% of the snaps, but only got
Hmm.
targeted 3 times and caught one of them for 5 yards. Also ran the ball 1 time for a yard, giving him 1.6 points. He was outscored in this game by offensive lineman Wanya Morris, who caught his only target for a 1 yard touchdown.
Oh no,
Yeah, that's where we're at right now.
it's been
Travis
bad.
Kelce, I believe, on the season is being outscored by offensive lineman Wanya Morris. Obviously, this is going to change as we talked about because of the injury, but it's just a scary start. But honestly, I don't think the Chiefs have a choice but to kind of go back to what we saw when
Yeah,
Travis Kelce was absolutely eating. Noah Gray was out there for 57% of the snaps, just doing cardio, and Harrison Butker got 10 points in this one. So Chiefs pulled it out by another Harrison Butker 50-plus yard field goal. He is their hero against the Bengals, but they win again. So
yeah.
that's that. Hoping for more out of Mahomes, and I think we'll see it. On to the next game where there was a total of 19 points scored. The Steelers went into Denver and beat the Broncos 13-6, where we saw another disgusting performance on both sides of the ball offensively. Justin Fields threw a touchdown pass. I'll let you guys know who in a bit, who it went to. He was 13 for 20, 117 yards, and that touchdown. Ran the ball 8 times for 27 yards. He fumbled the ball. I'm not sure exactly if he lost that. I didn't get around to checking whether he lost that fumble or not. But regardless, he scored 11.4 fantasy points. Um, we know what it is. He offers some rushing upside. But as long as he's the starter, we saw in Chicago that the passing volume isn't going to be that high. And I mean, it's not like he comes to Pittsburgh and has any better array of wide receivers. I mean, you can decide yourself who you like better between George Pickens and DJ Moore, but yeah, like I said, we know what we're going to get out of this offense pretty much. And
Yeah.
what that is Najee Harris running the ball 17 times for 69 yards, also catching one of his 2 targets for 5 yards. 8.4 points for him. Um, he got out snapped by Jalen Warren in this one.
Yeah.
Granted, I think they're both going to see pretty equal work. Najee's probably going to get more of the volume on the ground. I think he'll probably see whatever goal line work the Steelers end up getting,
Yeah.
which we'll see. I mean, but like I said, Jalen Warren did out snap Najee, played 48% of the snaps to Najee's 45. Carried the ball 9 times for 42 yards, was a bit more efficient, obviously. He has a bit more of that explosive ability, and he's only getting healthier. Caught both of his targets for 19 yards. So he finished with 8.1 fantasy points. Not the greatest day, but I mean, both of these guys are usable. And I think,
Yeah.
especially in this coming up week against the Chargers, which we will talk about later, George Pickens, on the other hand, is getting in that Michael Pittman sort of territory where it's like, he's going to be out there, probably the highest targeted receiver on the field, but how much is it going to be worth with the quarterback they have at the helm?
Yeah.
Got targeted 4 times, caught 2 of them for 29 yards, 4.9 points out of George Pickens. An interesting thing to note, not that it matters because the skill gap is so wide, but it's the second week in a row that we saw Van Jefferson play 3 more snaps than George Pickens. Just a stupid little tidbit. But Van Jefferson is out there. Like I said, we don't really want pieces of this passing offense, anyways. Um, he did catch 2 of his 3 targets for 14 yards. Calvin Austin's out there playing football, caught one
Hmm.
of his 2 targets for 6 yards. And then Pat Fryermuth is one that I do have interest in. I do take that back, part of the passing offense on the Steelers. But one thing we've seen Justin Fields do is target his tight end. And I mean, if the 2 tight ends on the Steelers were combined into one, it would have been a hell of a week. Pat
Yeah.
Fryermuth caught all 4 of his targets for 39 yards. And then Darnell Washington gets the first touchdown of the year for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Darnell Washington.
Yeah.
Pat played 58% of the snaps, and Washington did play 44%. Washington probably will get some run because he is big and he can block. Arthur Smith is their OC. But he finished with that one catch for the 5-yard touchdown, 7.5 points, 7.9 for Frymouth. Like I said, if you put them together, 15.4 would have been a hell of a day. Chris Boswell, another decent day, 9 points. Steelers defense, 13. And that's all she wrote for the Steelers in this one.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just as bad, if not worse, on the Broncos side of the ball, especially for fantasy performances. Bo Nix got the ball down the field a little bit more efficiently in this one. He was 20 of 35 for 246 yards. Still didn't throw a touchdown, threw 2 interceptions. He carried it 4 times for 25 yards, giving him 10.34. Cortland Sutton only caught one of his 4 targets for 26 yards, giving him 3.6. Josh Reynolds has actually been the most efficient wide receiver in this room so far. He caught 4 of his 5 targets for 93, giving him 13.3. Lil Jordan Humphrey caught 4 of his 5 for 50, giving him 9. And Greg Dulcich caught 3 of his 8 targets for 16 yards, giving him 4.6. It's just come to the point where, like, Josh Reynolds has had a solid first 2 weeks, but I don't know. The Broncos' offense has just been so poor. It's hard to be too excited about anything on that team. Javonte Williams showed a kind of flash of being able to catch balls out of the backfield and be that guy for them. He caught all 5 of his targets for 48 yards, but he did rush the ball 11 times for only 17. Now, the pass catching volume alone gets him to double digits. He finishes 11.5. It is a solid week for him. We saw Jaleel McLaughlin be basically non-existent this week. He did play 28% of snaps, but he only carried the ball 3 times for 6 yards, giving him 0.6. So not the week we want from him. I mean, the only pieces like Javonte deserves to be rostered, obviously. Cortland Sutton, you're still holding on to. I mean, Josh Reynolds, I don't completely hate him. He's been efficient for the volume they've got. But again, just how the offense has looked, how Bo Nix has looked, their air yards for each target do not look great. So it's hard to be really excited for anything in Denver, at least as of now.
Yeah.
It's a rough one. And this next game was decently rough as well. It was the Bears going into Houston and losing to the Texans 19-13. Caleb Williams, another rookie quarterback that does... One, he's making some pretty bad decisions, but at the same time, his offensive line is giving up pressures at over a 10% rate higher than the next team in the NFL. So Caleb is David Carr the first year the Texans were an expansion team right now. He is getting absolutely obliterated, but that affects
I think he was pressured on all but one drop back. I think it was like 34 of 35 dropbacks or something.
Yeah, and when he'll stay in there, he'll try to get the pass off, he'll take the hit, but it's not great to see a rookie franchise quarterback getting obliterated back there. He was 23 of 37, 174 yards, didn't throw a touchdown, threw 2 interceptions, carried it 5 times for 44 yards, giving him 9.36. It's rough as of now. The Texans do have a solid defense. DeAndre Swift has not been efficient at all on the ground. That did not change in this one. He carried it 14 times for only 18 yards. He caught 4 of his 5 targets for 24 yards, giving him 8.2. He is still the clear lead back. He played 66% of snaps. Next was Travis Homer, giving you 29% of snaps. And Khalil Herbert, with his 9% of snaps, snuck in and sniped the touchdown that you would hope would go to DeAndre Swift. Again, it happens in fantasy. Keenan Allen missed this one with the heel injury. Roma Dunze was able to go, and he actually played 94% of snaps. I was surprised to see him play that much, but it's good to see. He was only targeted 5 times. He caught 2 of them for 33 yards, giving him 5.3. DJ Moore saw 10 targets, caught 6 of them for 53 yards, giving him 11.3. Not a terrible week from DJ Moore. And a big thing, you see Caleb complete 23 passes for only 174 yards. I don't necessarily think the entire scheme of the offense is to get the ball out super early and go for the short passes. But when he doesn't have time to drop back and actually have a play develop, that's kind of the product of what you're going to see. A lot of things closer to the line of scrimmage. So until that changes, I don't see the average air on a target increasing significantly there. So that is a cause for concern for sure. Uh, with Keenan Allen out, DeAndre Carter got a lot of run. He played 71% of snaps, caught 3 of his 4 targets for 32 yards, giving him 6.2. I did like to see Cole Kmet appear to be the clear-cut starter at least this week. He played 77% of snaps, saw 5 targets, caught 4 of them for 27 yards, giving him 6.7. Gerald Everett only played 36% and caught 2 of his 3 targets for a single yard, giving him 2.1. Cairo Santos has been a reliable fantasy kicker. He gave us 11. And if you did, for whatever reason, happen to start the Bears defense, they gave you 7, so not too bad. But hoping for better weeks in Chicago for sure.
Yeah, most definitely. Honestly, I guess some could say the same for CJ Stroud's fantasy performance this week. It wasn't
Yeah.
awful, but yeah, I think the Bears are just going to be a tough matchup for offenses this year. Kind of worried for any Colts you may have this week, but we'll get into that in our previews.
Mm-hmm.
So, to CJ Stroud, he did not have an awful football game at all. It was 23 for 36, 260 yards and a touchdown. One rushing attempt for a negative yard, which I'm assuming was a kneel.
Yeah.
14.3 points out of him. Nothing spectacular, didn't kill you.
Yeah.
But, obviously would like to see some of the more high flying games. They're going into Minnesota this week, so we'll see. Joe Mixon was hurt by a hip drop tackle in this one. Managed to hurt his ankle, unfortunately. So he only
Mm-hmm.
played 29 of 62 total snaps on offense. Got 9 attempts for 25 yards and also caught 3 of his 5 targets for 25 yards. So he got 8 points before he went out of this game. When he did go out, you saw kind of a mix of Cam Akers and Dare Ogunbowale.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Cam Akers played 21% of the snaps, got 13 of them, had 7 attempts for 32 yards, and then lost a fumble. Also caught his lone target for 3 yards, giving him 2.5 points. Ogunbowale only carried the ball twice for 3 yards, but caught both of his targets for 20 yards, giving him 4.3 points. And he played 32% of the snaps. Akers played 21. Nico Collins, the clear-cut wide receiver one on this team, and
Yeah.
there is not a question about it.
Yeah.
He played 84% of the snaps, caught 8 of his 10 targets for 135 yards and a touchdown, 27.5 points for Nico. Every day I wish I reached up and drafted Nico in the second round, especially after the Pacheco injury, but coulda, shoulda, woulda.
Yeah.
Now, on to Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell, where there are a bit more issues. Stephon Diggs, we said he got that touchdown or 2 touchdowns
Yep.
in week 1, giving him the huge week. But we talked about his general depth of target, which also seems to be the problem with Tank Dell right now. He did drop a deeper ball, which had he caught that and scored a touchdown, we would have been having a complete different conversation. But Stephon Diggs does get targeted 6 times, catches 4 of them for 37 yards. I mean, you can see he's not really getting targeted down the field like that.
Mm-hmm.
7.7 points. As we said with Diggs, I feel like most weeks if he doesn't finish with a touchdown, you're not going to be as happy as I mean, he's going to get volume, but just kind of like where you drafted him,
For sure.
you'd hope for a bit more than that.
Yeah.
Now, Tank Dell, this is the second week in a row we've seen him get outsnapped by Stephon Diggs. Um, put up a concerning stat line this week. Like I said, dropped a long ball that could have went for like a 60-yard touchdown, but things happen. Caught 1 of his 4 targets for -3 yards, but ran the ball 3 times for 16 yards to kind of make up for it. 2.3 points out of him. definitely torched you if you started him this week.
Yeah.
I did in one league, and yeah, it didn't end too well. We're hoping to see better days out of Tank Dell. We know the talent, and
Yeah.
hopefully it just gets there. Along to the tight end room, where we will see a bit more consolidation because Brevin Jordan did tear his ACL. But he played 44% of the snaps. Dalton Schultz played 71. Cade Stover played 23%. Schultz got 3 targets, caught 2 for 21 yards. Stover caught his lone target for 18. Brevin Jordan caught his lone target for 4 yards. So it's pretty muddled. Not that I was really considering starting a tight end there, just given the talent in the tight end or in the wide receiver room.
Hmm.
But I mean, another option does go down. So Kamai Fairbairn, another great week, scoring 20 fantasy points. And the Houston defense gave you 15 points this week.
Is it starting to become a thing potentially, like if the Bears are playing against a team that even has an above average pass rush, you have to at least for now consider that defense because the Texans had 2 sacks week 1 against the Colts. Anthony Richardson's obviously a lot more mobile, but 7 sacks against the Bears. The Bears offensive line shows they let you get to Caleb. So at least until that changes, I do have some type of interest on the defenses going against the Bears.
Yeah, the Bears, like we said, the Titans, and so until we see anything different out of their
Will
kind of
Levis.
play calling, Will Levis has been making terrible decisions.
Yeah.
But with that, we go into our final game of week 2, which,
This is a
I
good
thought
one.
I was upset by the decisions made in the Ravens Raiders game on that 3rd and 1. There was still time left, so it could have gone either way.
Yeah.
In this game, um, granted, Saquon should have caught the ball. It hit him in the hands.
Yeah.
But Nick Sirianni's decision to not run the ball on that 3rd down effectively did cost them the game.
Mm-hmm.
Left the Falcons a minute and 30 seconds on the clock. They go down and win the game 22-21 and spoiled the Eagles' home opener. Yeah, it was a bit disgusting, but see the weird thing too, we saw a huge Falcons drive at the end of that game that would have been completely erased. That's the thing about it.
Yeah.
That whole drive, that Drake London touchdown, it doesn't happen if the Eagles run the ball on 3rd down.
It's true.
But
It is true.
what we did see is Kirk Cousins perform in crunch time with under 2 minutes to go. You saw Drake London. I mean, we saw the things that we wanted to see from the Falcons offense. Now it's just like, okay, can we see that more over the course of 60 minutes, not just in the last 2? On to the actual stats, where Kirk Cousins was 20 for 29, 241 yards, 2 touchdowns, 4 rushing attempts for a negative yard, 17.5 points effectively. Not a bad day at all out of Kirk. Kind of starting to look like the Eagles' defense are a pretty good play for your wide receivers and quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And the way Bijan was running, and also Tyler Algier, maybe even your running backs, Bijan obviously outsnapped Algier by a lot, as he should be. Algier is playing that true backup role. Bijan had 14 attempts for 97 yards, caught 4 of his 5 targets for 25, giving you 16.2 fantasy points. Like we said, without a touchdown, that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Tyler Algier added 9 attempts for 53 yards and caught his lone target for 12. 7.5 out of him. We know if Bijan is to ever go down, that he is going to get a whole lot of volume, and he's a decent NFL running back, so he could do something with it.
Yeah.
Ray McLeod saw get a huge boost in his snap share.
Mm-hmm.
He went from, let me see, 54% last week to 100% this week. Was on the field for every single one of the Falcons' offensive snaps. But not only that, so was Darnell Mooney.
Yep.
So, if I'm being completely honest, Ray McLeod and Darnell Mooney, if Kirk Cousins is back to any form, that he's a good passer.
Yeah.
And if it's going to be Ray McLeod, Darnell Mooney, and Drake London, who played 97% of the snaps, but I mean, sometimes guys come out, the cramp, yada, 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 here and there.
Yeah.
But if it's going to be consolidated between those three wide receivers, Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson, this offense could be a bit more interesting just
Mm-hmm.
outside of the main guys we thought. Mooney and McLeod offer a little bit of a spark.
For sure.
But yeah, McLeod caught 3 of his 5 targets for 42 yards, also had a rushing attempt for 3 yards, 7.5 points. Like I said, not the craziest stat line, but if he's going to be on the field that much, and he got 9 targets last week, 5 this week, 14 in the first 2 weeks, definitely someone I could be interested in as a stash.
Yeah.
Darnell Mooney, on the other hand, got 7 targets, caught 3 of them for 88 and a touchdown, 17.8 points from him. It was a great play from him, kind of broken play, but he finished it for the touchdown. Drake London also got 7 targets, which he caught 6 of for 54 and the game-winning touchdown, 17.4 points out of him. Kyle Pitts came back down to earth a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
didn't get a touchdown, as we talked about, but got targeted 4 times, caught 3 of them for 20 yards, 5 points. 10 points out of Younghoe Koo, and the Falcons walk out of Philadelphia with a dub.
Yes, they did. And you know, Jalen did his best. He didn't have the greatest football game, but he was also very electric with his legs. He absolutely got it done fantasy wise. He was 23 of 30, 183 yards, a touchdown. He did throw the interception at the end of the game. And I have already seen people that lost their fantasy matchups due to that interception, so I am sorry if that happened to you. He carried it 13 times on the ground for 85 yards and a touchdown, giving him 24.82. A very solid fantasy week for Jalen. Saquon Barkley carried it 22 times for 95 yards, caught 4 of his 5 targets for 21 yards, giving him 17.6. Obviously, if he catches that one at the end of the game, as Schiff mentioned, the game's over. And his finish looks a little better, but from a fantasy perspective, Saquon gave you a solid week. You can't be mad at that. With A.J. Brown missing this game with the hamstring injury, it was the Devonta Smith's show, and he caught 7 of his 10 targets for 76 yards and a touchdown, giving you 20.6. Exactly what you'd want to see with him having to step up into the wide receiver 1 role. A lot of people were curious. Jahan Dotson, they traded for him. He's the wide receiver 2 this week. Played 79% of snaps. Caught, I want to say, one of the first 2 passes of the entire game for 6 yards. And wasn't targeted again the entire game. If you're curious about Jahan Dotson with A.J. Brown being out, it's still not a viable fantasy play. We saw Britton Covey, who only played 32% of snaps, catch all 6 of his targets for 23 yards, giving him 8.3. And then I wondered also, well, how's Dallas Goedert going to fare? Okay. He caught 3 of his 4 targets for 38 yards, giving him 6.8. We do have to remember the Falcons have potentially a top 10, potentially a top 5 pass defense. They are very good against the pass. And it showed in this one with Jalen only throwing 183 yards. Jake Elliott had a solid day, nothing crazy, but I mean, he got it done. Gave you 7 fantasy points, and the Eagles defense, as Schiff mentioned, has not looked very good. They only gave you 1. And that is it for week 2 of the fantasy season. I do hope everyone had good showings from their guys this week. Obviously, some big injuries, a lot to cover in our next episode when we preview all of the week 3 games. But as always, drop a comment, any question you need, we will get it answered for you. We appreciate the support as always, and we will see you next time in the next episode. And Shiv?
As we say every time, come back the next time. take more reps with the first team.
Yes, sir.